Why is it that America seems to be building more apartments than ever before, and yet fewer people can find a home to start a family? If you look around any rapidly growing city today, you'll see all signs of a construction boom. But what's actually being built? Pretty much the same thing almost everywhere, whether you're in Austin, Miami, or Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not houses with yards or even family-sized apartments for that matter, just glass and steel towers filled with one-bedroom boxes. This is often pointed to as a sign of a healthy economy. After all, cities with major construction projects are usually touted as being in far better shape than ones with boarded up properties and a shrinking population. But all of that actually kind of covers up one of the biggest crises facing America today. Our housing market is no longer building homes for families. Anyone in their 20s or 30s already knows what I'm talking about. The right house is either too expensive, or the commute to work is too long, or there simply isn't anything on the market that you can actually raise a family in. This isn't just anecdotal either. According to the Institute for Family Studies, 25% of Americans under the age of 40 cite housing costs as one of the top reasons they're not having kids. By comparison, only 10% of that group blamed debt, and just 8% blamed a lack of support from the government. And the reason why they're saying this is because kids take up space that simply no longer exists in much of the new housing. Large apartment buildings of 20 units or more now make up a record share of new housing. What's even crazier is that half of them are just one bedroom, and many don't even have that. By contrast, only 5% have 3 bedrooms, which is what many families need if they want to start having kids above replacement level. So, why is this happening? Why are so many developers simply not building for large families? And is it true, as many politicians argue, that really this is just an issue of people not being able to afford to have kids, and that's why we need more taxpayer subsidies or even more central planning from the state? Yeah, no, not exactly. The real reason is actually a classic market distortion that has only become more exacerbated by the state and federal government. You see, after the Great Recession, developers started building small rentals for single millennials. And for a while, this worked just fine. But when millennials got older, builders didn't really adjust, even as Gen Z entered the picture. Developers are still mass producing studio apartments for people who don't want them. In New York City, for example, many of the new apartment buildings have enormous vacancy rates, but they're still being constructed for no other reason except maybe for potential investment opportunities. So actually, what's happening in many major American cities is something not too different from China's housing bubble that's currently imploding. Only this housing bubble is nothing like 2008. Instead, empty apartment complexes are being built not to house new and growing families. It's because historically, these sorts of projects are seen as safe investment vehicles. At least for right now, it doesn't seem like there's any real problem with the fact that there's no practical value, at least in the sense of building something that people actually want to live in. Now, the good news is this isn't impossible to fix. We just need to stop rewarding the wrong things. Right now, almost every federal and local policy counts units, not bedrooms. That's part of the reason we keep getting micro apartments instead of homes. The government incentives here are literally backwards. If the local, state, or federal governments really wanted to help, they could just rewrite existing rules instead of constantly making outrageous promises like this guy right here.
I'm freezing your rent as the next mayor of New York City.
Because rather than setting our cities up to be filled with failed Soviet-style housing projects, we could just repeal the countless restrictions that make it impossible for builders to build the things that people actually want. Local governments could repeal parking requirements that scale with bedroom count, or stop counting senior-only condos as affordable housing. Instead, they could target the kind of homes families need to actually grow. What's more, the low-income housing tax credit could reward developers for building affordable bedrooms instead of affordable units. Ultimately, there are plenty of policy changes that theoretically could be made, but what's really required here is a different outlook on what housing is supposed to be about in the first place. The fact is that government policy is corrupting this entire process. If builders were simply given the freedom to build more housing that young families actually want, rather than what allows politicians to brag about how good a job they're doing, even as they're the ones that make housing more and more unaffordable, that would go a long way towards solving this problem. You can't tell young couples to have more children while every economic and architectural signal tells them not to do it. A society that builds housing only for single adults is inevitably to get a society with a lot more single adults. Or as Milton Friedman once said, if you reward people for doing something, don't be surprised when they do more of it. Well, right now, we're rewarding people to do things that are not helpful, and we need government to do what they should usually do in situations like this. Sit down, shut up, and get out of the way.